I am Chase Alston, and the title of my chapel talk is The Joys of African American Genealogy. According to 18th century Irish statesman Edward Burke, quote, "People will not look forward to prosperity who never look back to their ancestors," end quote. Knowing of one's ancestry is empowering, and the journey of ancestral findings requires diligence and focused research methodology. The challenge that the majority of African Americans encounter is that slave roots can increase the difficulty in searching genealogy records. In many instances, individuals of non-Black, non-African American heritage have greater ease in searching and finding direct genealogy records because of earlier positions of dominance, during which time they controlled record keeping across multiple record provisions. Today, modern ancestral research companies, including Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, and MyHeritage DNA, are profitable, popular, and engaging genealogy seekers to search their DNA. This energy is powerful, and access to electronic databases have eased the burden and challenges for genealogy seekers, especially African Americans. Slavery complicates research of ancestral records for modern-day African Americans. However, it fails to reduce personal feelings of happiness, pride, and belonging, all of which flow from the ancestral quest experience. It is difficult to find filed slave transactions amongst family members in the South because slaves were passed between family members without formal property recordation, such as a deed of sale. For example, slaves were borrowed between families for work or given as wedding gifts without written documentation. One easier approach is to look for slave identification based on the position on the plantation. Those slaves who were assigned non-field majority work are more identifiable as they were seen by outsiders in interactions with the owners in the home. Quote, "Household slaves tended to be closer to their owners, so they were commonly named," end quote. In addition, ancestry review is made difficult for African Americans since slaves were not allowed to formally marry, which made the last name tracking dependent upon the slave's mother's last name. Thus, for the slave mother can lead to easier identification of the slave master, as the slave's father was not thought of in a paternal sense. Also, after the Civil War, slaves wanted a new start, so they changed their last names. This led to greater confusion and complication when searching slave identity as the presumed name of the slave owner having been changed. Historically, records for African Americans went unscanned into databases, which made family tree preparations more challenging. However, times have changed, and for the best, modern African Americans who now eagerly search electronic databases to find their identities. Electronic scanning of records for African Americans continues at the National Archives. There are billions of unsorted electronic records which genealogists in the future anticipate in being able to organize and review. This brings optimism for African Americans who seek to know their roots and from where they come. This continuing evolution of genealogy research alludes to the fact that it may become easier for 21st century African Americans to find historical data in time. Also, research indicates that the history of genealogy research for modern-day African Americans may ease with the burst in ancestry popularity as families increase their engagement with DNA companies such as Ancestry.com and its competitors. Americans have become obsessed with ancestry and research, and it is providing huge economic gains for ancestry research companies. African Americans now have hope to connect missing lineages given the electronic insurgence. Moreover, over the course of 2 years, I diligently researched my own family tree on both sides of my family. I scoured thousands of United States Census records, marriage license, and death certificates. I searched local state records, and I read several thousand pages of real estate and property records. In regard to my white lineage, it was much easier for me to locate the name of my great ancestors, going back to pre-American Revolution to 16th century England and Ireland. I am happy to have found that I am the proud 4-time great-granddaughter of a Confederate soldier and United States deserter marshal. My 3-time great-grandfather was a stud slave on the still-standing plantation 30 minutes from my mother's birthplace. Also, I found that I am a direct descendant of the American frontiersman Kit Carson. From census records, I learned of my mulatto and Native American ancestry on both sides of my family tree. These results are powerful and leave me feeling proud, connected, and fulfilled. Go research your ancestry and find your joy. Thank you.